but Loveland was the one who would leave to make way for Pottinger. So Loveland started off with created the law firm, and then Troy Malin Loveland, once Loveland went on to become vice president and general counsel of Ramada Inns, would become Pottinger. And in 1984, we can see that Troy Malin Pottinger is actually getting sued by some of the people who originally formed the legal company, because they don't correctly state who owns it and stuff like this. So there's stuff about that company that's interesting, but they center in on certain things. They are extremely interesting in what they target. They target cases about big companies. Jeff Gerth, special to the New York Times. Jeff Gerth, what a name, seems to come up.
He's
I mean,
packing.
you got Irvin Shapiro and you got Al Cox, and just on the side you got this
Irving
guy
looks
Bergman.
evil.
Yeah, he is evil though, I
He's
think.
got a bit of a
So,
George Soros kind of vibe about him. Or the Pope.
uh-huh. Yeah. Business is
Big
affected
bags.
negatively. Um, so there's stuff about the Banking Secrecy Act. There's a lot. What I think this goes into, and what I was looking for there, which I'm not going to stick around on, because of course these things get long. So I'll go on to the next article and explain. Because there you go. That article goes on another page, and it talks about Chemical Bank. And Chemical Bank is at this stage the fourth biggest, I think, bank in America, or the third biggest, or at least when it collapses or gets bought up in 1982. I think it gets bought up by Chase Manhattan, which is David Rockefeller's bank, in 1982. But this is a time of real importance. Now, I've got to explain something, and it's a real obvious thing once you realize the time, but you don't think about it straight away. So you've got all of this banking stuff going on. You've got lots of espionage. You've got lots of banks trying to work out what other banks are doing, financial firms trying to get the skinny on their rivals and stuff. But you've also got something really important. You've got the increase of technology and the change of technology. So technology is being introduced, and it means that all of these companies are having to reform all of their processes and all of their systems. And in doing so, it means they put all of their information in a way that's really easier to collate for tax reasons and for government to investigate.
All
And
the stuff they want to avoid, all the stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so all of this becomes about compliance. It becomes, are they compliant with regulations? When we exchange our paper books and we put it all into computers, we're suddenly putting all of the evidence that can see us go to court into a place where it's easily searchable. And they were realizing, we were managing to carefully hide away our naughty stuff with the previous technology, because we could make books and other things and just pile them up. But as soon as you put that into a different format, then people understand what it means, and it goes downhill. So they needed to gain compliance officers, and this is really what Troy Malin Pottinger ended up being, is the Bank Secrecy Act and other acts, as I talk about in the article, during the 70s and 80s, because the Bank Secrecy Act was put out in the early 70s, but trying to get people to comply with it was hard, because they knew what it meant. As soon as they started admitting to stuff, they were going to end up in court, and they were going to have loads of fines, and that's what happened. I mean, this is US after lapse is enforcing Bank Secrecy Act. So the Bank Secrecy Act got put in like 1970 or 1972 or something, and it's only in 1978 that they're saying, okay, we're going to do something about it now. And this is where Pottinger comes involved. You can see what he's under this section saying changes in operation. That's in the New York Times. Sorry about that noise. The stepped-up enforcement effort has had sometimes sometimes profound effect on banks and other major financial institutions. Chemical Bank, in the wake of its indictment last year, so led to an indictment, instituted substantive changes in its operation. The bank, sixth largest in the nation, strengthened its auditing and compliance division and hired two former Justice Department officials, Harold R. Tyler Jr., former, and it says former Deputy Attorney General, and J. Stanley Pottinger, former Assistant Attorney General in charge of Civil Rights Division. In an independent inquiry, the two men detailed various weaknesses in the bank's monitoring and reporting techniques. As a result, the bank adopted new, tighter procedures. Some banks have complained about the added record-keeping costs incurred as a result of the act, according to Charles Zuver, Legislative Counsel for the American Bankers Association. So you could see how they were coming in. They were coming in and saying, okay, these are all of your problems. These are where legally you're going to be found wanting under the new acts that are coming in. And as you update your files, this puts you in the problem. So this put them in the, like legal firms like this in the driving seat to some extent. Because it meant they were the ones who could employ the people to do the hard work, because in actual fact they weren't doing most of the hard work themselves. I think this article might actually say that in actual fact. We're in the Atlanta Constitution. That's a name for a paper, isn't it? There you go. Oh, it's actually the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and it's Sunday, May the 7th, 1978, and it says, firms pay millions to check integrity. In-house probes drain ills and funds. Drain ills and funds. What a weird way to say it. But listen to this. I get to start even say. I mean, all of these old articles get interesting as soon as you get into them. Like Washington. Several years ago, amid accusations it had been bribing foreign governments, government officials, Lockheed Aircraft Corporation began an in-house investigation to determine just how widespread the practice had been. The giant multinational company employed a prestigious New York law firm and well-known accountants who probed for more than a year, uncovering millions of dollars in questionable overseas payments, along with unsettling revelations. So Lockheed Martin, the executives are just discovering this for the first time. We didn't know any of this were happening. We were just going around making this money, and it turns out all our employees are doing the naughtiest things. We would never have done this ourselves. And this is what a lot of this is like. Along with unsettling revelations, Lockheed get another sock in the eye when the investigation was finally completed. A bill for a cool $4 million. The racket. 1980s, law firms come in, say, we can sort out all your problems, only cost you $4 million, better than the $200 million you're going to have to pay in fines, or something along those lines. It's always going to be a massive amount more. That tab for the 14-month investigation is evidence of what is emerging as a post-Watergate boom industry. Law firms, accountants, and former federal investigators are getting fat fees from corporations trying to come clean to the government and their stockholders. Ultimately, the cost of these probes must either be reflected in lower corporation profits or passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices. One government source who has been closely tracking the upsurge in so-called corporate integrity investigations estimates that fully 1/4 of the nation's Fortune 500 businesses have hired outside law firms or financial detectives in an effort to rid themselves of everything from dishonest executives to infiltration by organized crime. Of course it is. Companies specialized in corporate integrity probes, many of them started by former government lawyers and investigators, have been popping up around the country. So former investigators for the government start up the probes and then become lawyers and the legal teams to then tell you where all the probes are, what all the probes are finding and how to get away with it, but it'll cost you a cool $4 million. Recently, for example, J. Stanley Pottinger.
The cool 4 million as well. I feel like this writer was trying to get down with the kids. A cool 4 million. Yeah. Some fat fees.
Yeah. Fat fees, yeah.
How cool is 4 million? I mean, is it like 10,000 fans cool?
Oh, I don't know. It's turning me on. Sure. 4 million. Can you imagine all of the Ferrero Rocher that you can buy and spread all over. You say, oh. Yeah, anyway, recently, for example, Stanley Pottinger, former head of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, formed one such company in Washington with John Olszewski, a hard-nosed former head of the Intelligence Division of the Internal Revenue Service. So the IRS, the original head of the Intelligence Division for the IRS, gets together with J. Stanley Pottinger to go and investigate companies and what they're doing wrong for the companies, paid for by the companies at massive fees. I mean, they are raking it in at this point. When Pottinger's law firm is hired to probe a large corporation, he simply contracts with his own company to do the actual investigative legwork. So he's just like making money, and these guys are getting away with loads. And again, they say down here, you notice which started aggressively pursuing improper political contributions during Watergate era and has been since focused on corporate bribes to foreign officials. Now think about this: if what you're finding in all of these cases, that Pottinger and people are going in and they're finding all of these bribes, all of these things that this company has done wrong, and they're telling the company, how much can they then hold over the company in the future? How much do they hold back? How many of those bribes do they use for themselves? And this is really the Nixon era government finding work in organized crime in the banking sector, as the banking sector was being transformed with the use of computers. So it's a very interesting place Pottinger sets himself up in.